This story begins in the fall of 2019. I'm an Indian citizen with an Indian passport living in China, in a quiet city called Zhongshan, near the metropolis Guangzhou. My passport was about to expire, so I went to the Indian embassy in Guangzhou, a whole day endeavor from where I live. The first time I went there, it was closed for some religious holiday. So I went back to work, took a day off the following week, called and emailed to confirm that they are indeed open, and even made a document checklist for the application. At the passport office, I was told that I needed to get my rental agreement and police registration certification, which I wasn't informed during my previous conversations. I went back, collected those documents, took a day off the following week, traveled to Guangzhou, and this time they said they would only accept cash, which was not written anywhere. But okay, I ran to the nearest ATM, withdrew cash as they stopped accepting applications after lunch at 12:30. At 12:25 p.m., I paid the cash and successfully applied for my passport. The agent said that I can travel with my current passport anywhere until I get a new one. Only then it'll get cancelled. He said the new one would take approximately a month. Okay, I applied for a new passport. I was supposed to go on a trip to Vietnam and Thailand and return within a month. So I asked if I could pick my new passport up once I come back. They said, okay. I went traveling. That was nice. Peaceful. Then this happened.
China has identified the cause of the mysterious pneumonia outbreak in Wuhan city, and it's from the same family that caused the deadly SARS epidemic 17 years ago.
I couldn't get back into China, so I went to India. I thought I could check up on my family, maybe spend some time with them, and return to China in a couple of weeks. What could go wrong?
पूरे देश में आज रात 12 बजे से संपूर्ण देश में संपूर्ण लॉकडाउन होने जा रहा है.
I was in a countrywide lockdown. I couldn't go anywhere. What about my passport? After about 12 to 15 unsuccessful calls and 5 unanswered emails, I eventually got through to the embassy in China. I thought, well, okay, at least the DHL is functioning. Maybe they can just mail it to my address. Nope, it's illegal to mail an Indian passport out of any border. What's to be done now? They said I can cancel the passport I applied for in China and apply for a new one in India. Sounds simple, yeah? I understood it's an extraordinary situation. After some more unanswered calls, the embassy in China cancelled my passport, sent a direct email to the passport office in India stating that the passport I applied in China is now cancelled. Wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, I made an application at the local passport office in India. I was granted an appointment on a bright Monday morning, took a day off, went to the passport office well-dressed and early. My fingerprints and photo were taken at counter A, documents were checked at counter B, and I was interviewed at counter C. Wait, the middle-aged raspy-voiced government official paused. We have on file that you have another passport issued in Guangzhou, China. Where is that? I then explained my situation to the officer, and then she exploded. It's illegal to travel with an old passport once another passport is issued. How did you travel? She was furious. But I specifically checked with the Indian embassy in China. They said I can travel with this document until I get the new one. Only then it becomes invalid. Plus I went through the immigration checkpoints in 5 different countries. If it's illegal, they should have raised a red flag. Annoyed, she said that it is my fault that I didn't collect my passport back in China. I meekly replied, but COVID? She asked me to go to the regional passport office or RPO and see if they would fix the situation. So I took another day off, wore a mask and socially distanced my way to the RPO. I was made to wait for 4 hours. A woman in her 50s was crying that it's been 4 years since she applied for a passport reissue and she still doesn't know what the actual problem is. My stomach began to churn. What if this is me? Where would I be in 4 years? My name was called. I was promptly led into an air-conditioned room where another officer was carefully studying me. I explained my situation. Then I was asked to come another day. I took a day off, went back to the RPO. I was made to wait for 6 hours. They might need a certificate of genuinity. Only at this point, I exploded. I gave you every document I possibly could. The Indian embassy in China mailed you directly. What more can I do? It was 10 months of frustration. At this point, he calmly replied, "You applied for a passport in China. It was issued. Then it was cancelled. Now that becomes the old passport to the new passport you're currently applying. The passport you're holding in your hand, the current passport, becomes the old passport to the passport you applied for in China, which was cancelled. Does that make sense? Now our officers are in disagreement on how to proceed with this issue. There, at that moment in that old crumbling government office building, I thought of the Bohemian novelist and short story writer Franz Kafka. I couldn't help but laugh at that situation. Kafka is one of my favorite authors because of how I always identified with his protagonists, and by an extension, Kafka himself. Kafka's stories are usually set in a realistic world with surrealistic elements thrown in. His protagonists are often isolated, facing bizarre, oppressive, and incomprehensible bureaucratic powers. Societal isolation, existential anxiety, guilt, absurdity, and pointlessness are recurring themes in his stories. In his novel The Trial, the protagonist Joseph K., a chief cashier at a bank, is unexpectedly arrested by two unidentified agents from an unspecified agency for an unspecified crime. Joseph is summoned to appear at the court without being told the exact time or the room. Throughout the story, Joseph goes through an absurd bureaucratic loop, and finally he's executed without ever knowing what crime he committed or what the trial was actually for. Bureaucracy is ever present in Kafka's work, so much so that any situation or system that's needlessly, pointlessly, illogically, and soul-crushingly oppressive, that goes beyond tragedy and becomes absurdly comical, is called Kafkaesque. Kafka's biographer Frederick Carl actually took issue with how we use the term Kafkaesque. He argues that Kafkaesque goes even further than mere bureaucratic frustration. He writes, "What's Kafkaesque is when you enter a surreal world in which all of your control patterns, all your plans, the whole way in which you have configured your own behavior begins to fall to pieces." Kafka's literature usually comes across as illogical, but his stories are set in a universe where the logic is governed by some kind of an insane loop, a malevolent circle. Arresting someone solely on charges of resisting arrest would be Kafkaesque. Carl further writes, "You don't give up, you don't lie down and die. What you do is struggle against this with all of your equipment, with whatever you have, but of course you don't stand a chance." That's Kafkaesque. Kafka's own life story resembles one of his surrealist books. Kafka had this lifelong suspicion that people found him mentally and physically repulsive, even when people who knew him found him charming and intelligent. Kafka throughout his life was filled with this fear of sexual failure. Kafka only published a handful of short stories in his lifetime. Plagued by self-doubt, he burned a huge amount of his short stories, novels, and manuscripts. Since he was diagnosed with tuberculosis, he knew he didn't have much time left. He left all of his work, both published and unpublished, to his friend Max Brod, with instructions that they should be destroyed upon his death. Brod thankfully ignored this request and published the novels and the collected works. Brod found it really hard to piece Kafka's work together and arrange them in order, as Kafka often would write his stories without any seeming order. He sometimes even worked backwards from the end. Franz Kafka was the perfect outsider. His protagonists are always dejected outsiders looking into a dysfunctional system. An entry from his personal diary reads, "Enclosed in my own four walls, I found myself as an immigrant imprisoned in a foreign country. I saw my family as strange aliens whose foreign customs, rights, and very language defied comprehension. Though I did not want it, they forced me to participate in their bizarre rituals. I could not resist." Maybe this is why I identify with Kafka so much. More often than not, I feel like an outsider peeking into a surreal, dysfunctional reality. The spirit of Kafka visited me at the passport office the other day. Suddenly, I felt unburdened by the bureaucratic proceedings. It stopped being oppressive. I finally watched it for the surreal comedy that it is. I laughed. I know Kafka would have too. If you want to get into Kafka's work, I would suggest starting from The Trial, which I had mentioned in this episode. You could also start reading the Metamorphosis, a surreal story of a salesman who transforms into a giant bug. You can get this book or any audiobook of your choice for free by going to audibletrial.com/Northern Diaries. You also get a free 30-day trial membership which you can cancel anytime, no obligations. Check out my channel for more videos like this, and here's a link to one of my recent videos about how social media and news affect your daily life. As always, if you like what you saw, share and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon so that you get notified anytime I post a new video. I also have a Patreon page where you can support this channel by donating anywhere from just $1. I sincerely thank all of my awesome Patreon supporters. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video.